Well, I'm very honored, George Simons, to talk to you today on the Red Couch Talks. Welcome.
Well, the honor is all mine, and I'm finally glad to see the red couch that you're sitting on. We've talked a bit about it, and it's nice to have treasures from the past.
Yeah, this is actually a real blast from the past, and it's also falling apart. This has been in my family for over 40 years.
Wow.
Um,
I'm looking at the wall here, and I have my great-grandfather's pipe and watch mounted in a picture frame here on the wall, and these are like 140 years old. So I don't know who to give them to because I've outlived all of my family, and going on 89 now. That's a lot of work, but anyway. So what's up?
I'm sure we can maybe bring by some students to pick them up at some stage.
There you go.
Other than old furniture, tell us a fun fact about yourself, George, that people won't read about you on the internet.
Well, I think the fun fact is one of them, at least, is I am a haiku maniac,
Wow.
which means that if you go to my LinkedIn, you will find every other day or so some haikus that I've created on my experience, events in the world, politics, and so on and so forth. And I love haiku because it makes you say exactly what you want to say with precisely the right number of words and not too many of them, you know? The idea of having 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and 5 syllables in a haiku is is a pleasure to see them come together. So that,
How did you get a haiku fan?
well, that's a good question. I have my best buddy lives in Scotland, and he and I grew up together in Cleveland, Ohio, in the USA. But that's long, long time ago. Um, so, at any rate, he's been interested in poetry, and I've been interested in poetry. We've done a lot of writing together, and at some point, the two of us started to send each other each morning a haiku. We'd get up and create a haiku and send it, and that's we don't do that anymore, but we do send each other stuff that we've just created for appreciation and friendship purposes. So, and I've always liked poetry. I find poetry is powerful stuff in the way that a lot of things that you are forced to read. Uh, are not very interesting and are not very stimulating and maybe factual, but you know, what I like about the work that I do is that we're into personal stories.
Hmm.
Okay. When you and I share a personal story, we
Hmm.
become like each other, and we
Hmm.
might even like each other a bit more. But what we're learning from neuroscience today is that when you tell me your story, my mirror neurons bring that together and record it in me. You're becoming a part of me when you tell me your story, and of course, vice versa. So, to me, getting people to exchange their stories is one of the most important things that I think that I do with my creation of games for learning and intercultural affairs. The Diversity is the name of our series of over 150 games that deal with cultural regions as well as cultural issues and political and social issues. So it's very much personal, and the way we're going to put our world back together has got to be person to person at this point.
Hmm. I agree. George, you and I got connected through the intercultural management course in Dijon
Mhm.
about 10 years ago. So we've known each other for a decade, but I already admired you from afar before for a long time. So, you're always one of the people I look up to. Like when I grow old, I want to be George. And
Keep your hair.
yeah, you've been very supportive for me over, my book writing processes. So I admire you also not only as an interculturalist, but also as a storyteller. You have this amazing way of writing. Can you talk a bit about your, deeper motivation? What got you into the field of interculturalism? When did you start to love the written word? What was your journey like?
Well, first of all, I grew up in the melting pot, and the melting pot was the area in the United States where all kinds of immigrant groups settled. So I was in the southern parts of Cleveland, Ohio.
Hmm.
And you could walk about 4 blocks and you'd hear people speaking with a different kind of accent or different language. You'd see a church or a synagogue or a religious temple or whatever, mosque uh, in that neighborhood. And it's funny stuff because I didn't realize the impact that had on me when I was that age. Okay, we just took that all for granted. And one of the discoveries I made was I was studying Russian when I was about 23 years old,
Hmm.
and I was going through a Berlitz course, and the professor, a woman from Belarus, she was asking me. She said, "You know, you pretty good at pronouncing all these things in Russian. Most Americans have problems with that." And I thought, and I said, "Well, I don't know." And then I realized, as little kids, we didn't learn the languages from the neighbors, but we could imitate their accents, you know? So there were more sounds collected in my head because of the diversity of the neighborhood. The second element, which is the most precious, is my father. My father took his friends, usually from about 6 different countries. Everybody was mixed back then. They went fishing in Lake Erie, and of course, I went along with them.
Hmm.
And on the way home, my dad often, almost every Saturday or Sunday that we went, took me to a different restaurant. The Hungarian restaurant, the Russian
Hmm.
restaurant, the Jewish delicatessen, the Chinese restaurant, and so on and so forth. And he inspired me with this saying. He says, try everything at least twice. The
Hmm.
first time might be a fluke. Okay. And what that gave me was I inherited from my dad one of the most precious things for cultural study, which is replace fear of difference with curiosity about difference. My dad was an adventurous guy, tried anything new, anything different, and he took me along with that and, encouraged me so that I became fundamentally curious about differences rather than terrified of them. And as you know, we're living in a world right now where the kind of viciousness against people is directed toward their differences. The
Hmm.
United States, Trump is throwing out anybody who's not his kind of person. The immigrants and cleaning out. He's trying to get the this week, I guess, the Supreme Court is listening as to whether they want to change the constitutional understanding of it used to be, or it is, if you're born in the United States, no matter where you're from, you're a citizen.
Hmm.
And he's trying to get rid of that, as well as the hundreds and thousands of people that he's throwing out of the country, trying to send back to their original countries. At a time when there's so much pain in the world, the United States is not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Now, I say that because I'm a US American, but the story is similar in many other places. And I'm looking at this as I always say to people, I may be an expatriate, but I'm not an expatriate. I want my country, you know, even though I went through the kind of anti-ethnic bias. I mean, we were from the Polish and German communities, mostly the Polish and Slavic communities, where I was living as growing up as a kid. And of course, we were just, looked upon as next to black, in terms of the Western Reserve, U.S. native Anglo. supposedly construction of the country, you know. I mean, it's fast. The other thing I didn't mention is I've had some good mentors besides my dad.
Yeah.
In high school, I had a history professor who was just wonderful, you know, and from him, I learned that you know you've got to take a look at what's going on and be curious about what's going on. And there are interesting stories in history that Donald Trump tries to scrape from the textbooks and gets parents groups to get rid of the books that tell the truth about slavery and all these other kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened, of course, was, you know, I got this from my from my history prof this sense of, you know, look at it carefully. See what people are like. And I mean, you find things in history like, you know, when we were at the middle of the US-Mexican War in the 1800s, okay,
Mm-hmm.
the newspapers were saying, we cannot conquer all of Mexico. We can do it militarily, but
Mm-hmm.
we can't absorb that many inferior people,
Oh,
you know?
okay.
And that was a big argument for not taking over Mexico if we had the military force to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's tons of stuff in history that just are frightening when you think about what absence of humanism and human respect for people and their backgrounds and their stories can bring us. So yeah, so that I guess that pretty much tells you how I got into this sort of stuff. And then when I was in graduate school, the we my I and members of my class got engaged with home visits. In other words, we take a black family to an Italian family and have coffee and tea in the evening, and then the next week they'd reverse it and go to the other neighborhood and so on. It was a program back then for the for defeating the kind of racism that was going on. Because
Uh-huh.
back in those days, I mean, we had the troubles in the U.S. I mean, you know, I see you know military vehicles at the crossroads in the city. I remember being in downtown Cleveland and close to the armory, and all of a sudden, out of the armory came truckloads of young soldiers grasping their rifles, looking very scared.
Mm-hmm.
And these young soldiers went to Kent State University, where ultimately
Mm-hmm.
Kent State students were shot for protesting against the war in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And I was working there at Oberlin as well, and I did some consulting about young people who really, young men who said, "Hey, get me out of here. I got to go to Canada. I don't want to go. I don't want to go abroad killing people." You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
So when you lived in the US and then at some stage, didn't you move to Finland as well?
I didn't move to Finland, but for about 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
I was invited as a lecturer,
Mm-hmm.
and I was going there for about 10 days or 2 weeks in the spring and 10 days or 2 weeks in the fall
Mm-hmm.
to do some lecturing. And we did some interesting construction of games about Finland, and we created games for the migrants from Syria back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very much oriented toward helping students understand. And actually, I'm so proud of that program because the students created games for understanding cultures. They
Mm-hmm.
learned how to facilitate them, and they went out in the high schools and organizations and uh, you know, public seminars and conducted these games for people in Finland. It was quite an accomplishment that they did back then. And we've been working with a lot of universities in the meantime on other topics as well. So,
And how long have you lived in France?
30 some years now,
All
roughly.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I bought a house here and then I was coming and going and coming and going, and now I'm a pretty much a permanent resident. So I've lived more than half of my life in Europe now.
Mm-hmm.
I've spent about 4 years in Germany and another 4 years in the Netherlands. And I say I've been living here in France, but until COVID came along, I was Mr. On the road most of the time. I
Uh-huh.
mean, I worked in about 55 different countries, doing seminars and stuff. Some engagements were long ones, like I was going for about 6 years to the Philippines to train the agents of the Asian Development Bank for
Uh-huh.
dealing with different cultures that they were creating projects for and so on. So that was a biggie. And I did a lot of online work for the UN representatives in various places. So, yeah, but a great deal of it was just organizational development and
Mm-hmm.
diversity training and gender issues that would wind up being a workshop. And some of them went on, like the one in the one in Philippines. As I say, I was going there about 4 times a year for a month and doing seminars for them. And we were working on intercultural negotiation and communication largely.
And right now, most of these topics, they're sort of banned,
Well, that's the
out of
question.
fashion.
They're trying to eliminate that. I don't know what to say. I mean, every day Trump does something different, and I mean he's not alone in this. There's movements in this direction in other European countries and so on.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to really decolonize and get busy about stuff. I'm 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 interested now, and I'm making connections with people about the possibility of trees. Yeah, well, I mean I'm interested in the Chinese Belt and Road project,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because what that's going to do is create a commercial line all the way across 2 continents or three
Mm-hmm.
continents, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very important that we take into consideration the local cultures and how best they can participate without just simply being bought off, or as happened with so much of the colonialism in past centuries, that the organizations, the companies in Europe. I'll have to answer it. You can edit this, right?
I can.
Yeah.
I can press the pause button. Here we go.
There we go.
So maybe start again from the Chinese Belt and Road project.
Yeah, well, I have one trainer in China who is very interested in our work,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm organizing with her other possibilities. We have already a major uh, piece of work going on in Africa. I have a woman from Nigeria who's there and has organized not just our games, but fundamentally raising the issues of how do we decolonize what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And decolonization means not just helping people find their cultural roots and backgrounds, but also decolonizing the minds of Europeans who feel that they're superior and need to make everybody work and believe in the same dimensions. The British companies, the East India Company and other companies like that, uh, they not only sent commercial people, they sent missionaries with Bibles and guns to make sure that the people stopped being savages and pagans and started believing in the truth, which was, of course, subsidized commercially and oriented toward exploitation at that time. So with this Belt and Road project, it's very important that it enrich the cultural dimensions and exchange in such a way that everybody benefits from it and feels enriched both culturally as well as in the business world. One of the most important writers at this point is Paul Schaefer. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not,
No.
but he's written a number of articles and books. And
Mm-hmm.
his point is we need to get out of the commercial age, the enterprise age, and get into the cultural age, which
Mm-hmm.
is, if you look at the big, we have a word in intercultural studies which is called meta narrative, big
Mm-hmm.
stories, okay? And the fact is that every group has its big stories about belonging and who they are and all that other sort of stuff. And the big story today, of course, for the last 400 or 500 years, has been focused on commercial success, okay? How are you rated? Well,
Mm-hmm.
what's your GDP? Okay. So everything is valued in terms of dollars and cents and euros and centimes and yen and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting at this point because I'm little by little going broke here because most of my lifetime's investments are in the United States, and since Trump has been messing around, the value of the dollar has gone almost 20% beneath what the euro is here. And so I've got to be careful about paying my bills. It's especially since I'm not salaried any place anymore. Fundamentally, we have just created a nonprofit organization for our diversity game
Uh-huh.
propagation,
Yeah.
and we want to create a platform whereas people can get online and create games and play games and use them rather than having us send paper games or PowerPoint games to them. So I'm hoping within the next year or so we'll have a platform that enables people to go into this. And we have probably over 40,000 questions in our database of cultural issues, and it's important to keep those up to date. So
Yeah.
if we have a platform where we
Yeah.
can get feedback and update
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
so if you buy a paper game of 200 cards from me, good, okay, it's good for a year or two, and then things are changing. Data is changing. Culture is on the move always. If it's on a platform, we can just go right in and update it. And then the next time you use it, you've got the updated
Mm.
material.
Mm.
So we're looking into that and looking into obviously financing that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Try to find, grants and substance support for that sort of thing, which, as you mentioned, is more and more of a challenge now that Trump and others have gone after diversity as a plague rather than as an opportunity for bringing our world to peaceful togetherness.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, George, I'm convinced we're gonna go back into the other side of the pendulum again. I mean,
I
everybody
hope you're
already
right.
sees that this is not sustainable, what is currently happening. So I predict that in a very short time frame, people will ask those questions again, like, how can we work better together? Like, I mean, and I see it in my coaching practice, I see it everywhere. It's like, oh, some basic things, like that were understood maybe 5 or 10 years ago, they don't seem to work anymore. So, it even boils down to like, how do we actually communicate one on one, live in the real world? So I'm sure, something like diversophy, everything that you've built, all the assets that you've built, they will be very relevant again in the future. We just need to, we just need to work on the branding and the marketing and selling these topics, which I think, has been a challenge for interculturalists as far as I can remember. It's been a discussion we've had for 30 years now, like how do we actually sell what we do so it comes across the right way and not the wrong way.
Uh,
I wanted to ask,
before
no, I
before
wanted
you
to
leave that,
go ahead.
I want to say I hope you're correct but we have recently created a game on dictatorship.
Hmm.
And the steps that Trump is taking are happening twice as fast as
Yeah,
happened with Hitler and Mussolini.
yeah,
And people's ability to criticize is, being oppressed in as many ways as possible, and people are afraid.
yeah,
So it's going to take some real American courage to change this. And I'm not at all convinced that people are going to do that.
yeah.
History tells us a different story.
What,
Anyway, I'm sorry.
yeah, what I wanted to come back to is so you said nonprofit, you're building a platform, financing is a question. How would people be able to engage? If, for example, if I had any audience members who say, hey, this sounds like an interesting project, or I'm maybe a specialist on AI and I want to help here. How would you want them to engage with you, George?
Oh, we're wide open to people who would like to develop games.
Uh-huh.
One of the elements of our project is going to be an AI coaching system so
Uh-huh.
that people can be helped in how they do that. And one of the advantages of having all this stuff in the platform is right now, let's say you want to do, say you've got a German company that wants to do business in Spain,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Well, you can buy our game on Germany, and you can buy our game on Spain, and then you can sort through the cards that you feel would be useful and put them together. With the platform, as a subscriber, you can go and pick out the materials that are exactly what you want to say and fit the audience that you are working for immediately. You don't have to go through buying, selling, sending, and all that other sort of stuff. It's going to be, what issues do you want to deal with, and what issues do your people need to hear? And here it's yours. Go in there. You know, Search the database for whatever you need, as
Hmm.
opposed to you buy this game and you buy this game, you mix them together and you decide, it's the same process, only instant, much more instant at least than what it would
It's
be.
it sounds like an exciting new platform. It sounds like something, that will also have high quality from what I know that you deliver constantly. So I think people will probably be able to get in touch with you about it, right? If they want to. Yeah. Do
No
you
problem.
do you have a piece of advice for a younger version of yourself? Like right now, young people often they have a lot of question marks about their future. But let's say, you were again 25. What would you tell yourself with with all the knowledge and experience that you have today?
Well, see, that's cheating because I wouldn't know that at 25.
I know.
But what I'm just doing some stuff on generational differences,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And one of the things we need to look at is what those are. Those are very real. I just read an article about the way that Generation Z tends to look at people in a discussion, and it's very different from other discipline.
Hmm.
And there's this question of not talking to people.
Hmm.
Now, everybody has a electronic telephone, okay? They don't use it to talk to people. They use it to make messages and da 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 da. But if I ask a young person, intern of mine, oh, you got a problem with this piece of the internet, call a customer service or technical support and work it through with them. They will not. They will send a week of emails trying to resolve the problem rather than just ringing the phone and talking to somebody. So talking directly to others is really changed in that kind of a system. The
Hmm.
other thing that we're worried about right now is the future of young men.
Yeah.
Uh, I've been involved in men's stuff for many, many years.
Yep.
Back in the 19 70s, we started a workshop called How to Love an Angry Woman for men only.
Okay.
And we did a lot of those in Germany and in the United States.
Tell me
Uh,
about that.
well, it was basically, it was the first big burst of feminism, and
Yeah.
guys were starting to say, well, my wife doesn't love me anymore. My daughter thinks I'm a nit, and my secretary is sort of hounding at me, and so it was understanding your own male culture and what kind of adaptations would work in improving your relationship with women at that point. And
Hmm.
we did those for a number of years in various places. But, so what we're at right now, however, is that feminism has succeeded in a number of things. And don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-feminist in any respect,
Hmm.
but a couple of things are happening. One is that some feminists are beginning to realize that being successful in the patriarchy means perpetuating the patriarchy in terms of its values and systems. Okay. So
Yep.
this business of that I was mentioning earlier of culture, Paul Schaefer's ideas about culture, the cultural age and the economic age are written into the big picture that everybody believes in, even in the feminist movement. And there are some women who are now writing about, hey, we don't want to run a world like the men have been running a world, or do we? I mean, or is it just a matter of getting equal pay,
Hmm.
So that's a big issue, but it's still there. The
Hmm.
other thing that's happening is I don't know, you may know Warren Farrell. He has a book called The Boy Crisis. And there's lots of stuff coming out about boys and young men right now. Uh, as I understand the statistics within in the US and the UK, 80% of suicides are young men between the ages of 19 and 39.
Yeah.
80% of suicides. And men are far more successful at suiciding than are women. A
Okay.
lot of women recover from their suicides, okay? So there's that issue. Then there's the issue of education. Women are starting to outnumber men in institutes of education, academic environments. And interestingly, one research which is utterly flabbergasting is that they had students write papers or conduct tests or be responded tests, and they would use the same test results. In one case, it would be possible to identify the sex of the person who wrote the letter and wrote the exam. Well, let's say you wrote a paper,
Hmm.
a research paper, and it's got the name Angie on it. Okay, and then I write one and it's got the name George on it.
Yeah.
If the names are, if the people are identified, you automatically will get 15% higher grade than I will as a man. That's what's going on in education at this point.
Hmm.
In other words, that I have, if things are anonymous, we'll get pretty much the same grade. And I mean, they've done this experiment in a variety of contexts, and it's really, I say, flabbergasting. That all of a sudden women are given automatically better scores because of their gender.
And is that a global study?
I think it's largely Anglo.
Okay.
There's several studies. Yeah, I mean, you can look up stuff. I don't have it at my fingertips at the moment, but
Because I would probably bet this is not true for Switzerland.
maybe not. I don't know.
Sorry.
But I when I look at the intercultural field, realize
Yeah.
that probably 85% of the people involved in intercultural work are women. Think of the conferences you've gone to, and
Yeah. And how many people can actually live from that? That's a
well,
question I'm wondering about.
that's especially as it's being attacked so aggressively at the moment. How do you live from that? What do you do to make that work?
Hmm.
Especially because I think, what we are learning from neuroscience and from cognitive psychology is really revolutionizing the approach to intercultural work. Let me
Mm,
highlight that.
yep,
Okay. We have been used to looking at cultural dimensions of different cultures, people's habits and beliefs and so on and so forth, and sort of labeling those with the culture. And
yep.
there's no truth to that. It continues to be that. But really, what culture is the discussion that we have with ourselves and with each other that is about how do we survive and succeed in the contexts we find ourselves in. So, in other words, from my mother's womb, my mother was one of those who played music so that I become familiar uh, with classical music before I was born.
Hmm.
But the moment we start communicating with children, we're communicating a conversation of what reality is all about. Okay.
Hmm.
And we get those in our education, in our families, and our work, and so on. And as we go forward, this continues, and we search and learn things and share things with each other. And fundamentally, culture is that inner discussion that we have with ourselves and with each other about how do we succeed and survive in the different contexts we find ourselves.
Hmm.
Hofstede used to say that culture is the software of the mind, and actually, what May Gwynn, who's one of the people who wrote one of the later books on new books on culture and neuroscience, points out, no, it's context is the software of the mind. In other words, your mind is constantly working to say, what do I need to do here to be right, to get correct, to get success, and to survive? Okay. So one of my images for how culture works is, let's imagine you get up out of bed in the morning and you open your wardrobe closet door and you say, what do I wear today? And then you say, okay, where am I going today? Who am I going to be with today? Da, 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 and I pick out what to wear.
Hmm.
This is how culture works.
Hmm.
In other words, I look at what are the contexts I'm going to find myself in, and given that, what part of my identity needs to be used?
Hmm.
What part of my identity is going to be at the surface? What kind of part of my identity is going to be dangerous for this? Okay, all of those kind of things. This
Hmm.
is where culture exists.
Hmm.
Then, you know, this discussion with ourselves and with each other about what culture is what gives rise to cultural artifacts. In other words, whether we're talking about painting or sculptures or architectures or neighborhood building, these are the results of cultural discussions that we're having with ourselves. So the things that we find out there in our world, although we call them culture, are not culture. The roots of culture is the inner discussion and the shared discussion that we have that creates what in different contexts is seen as common sense and what we proceed with. So this is extremely important to be aware of, that we are building culture day by day. Culture is not a fixed thing. This is one of the reasons why also I'm so interested in creating a platform that will carry this message and enable people to consult their identities rather than just simply be victimized by whatever people are supposed to believe about other people, you know.
George, this was very insightful, and I'm sure a lot of people will need to rewind this part of the talk and to really understand what you're talking about. And I
Is that
just wanted
bad?
to, I just wanted to mention that when you were talking, I was thinking about Joseph Scholz recently, at a conference saying, he's talking about embodied cognition, and also that when I work with my clients, that very often we we bring it down to the relationship level. So what is actually happening between two people? And you said it right in the beginning of our conversation. You mentioned, that the storytelling has influences on the mirror neurons in your brain, and the fact that, you bring people together to play a game is already healing. It's already part of the healing process. So having this community of people that you can, you interact with is already part of the healing process. And I completely agree with you. We need to work on those one-on-one relationships and those group settings where we get people together to actually communicate with each other in one way or another, if it's online or offline. That I think, that will be our major task as
Well,
interculturalists in the future.
and I believe Joseph Scholz, along with Meg Gwynn, is one of the prophets of what's taking place in our new understanding of culture. And I have a colleague who's working on neuroscience and culture at the moment, and is working with the opportunity to help people do exactly that, and help people exercise leadership that employs what we understand about how culture really works, and how we manage it. So that's the case. Yeah.
Amazing. Now I need to come to the final question. What is coming up for you in the next few weeks? What have you planned?
What is coming up for me in the next 2 weeks? Getting caught up on my income tax,
Awesome.
which I have to pay in the United States as well as in France. Um, so that's going to take most of my time. I'm regularly working with the people in my organization as to presenting appropriate input to conferences and congresses and so on and so forth. And I'm just, I've had a sort of a stage of bad health for a couple of years now, and
Mhm.
I'm feeling better than I have in a while. So um, getting out, what I tease people, I say, people say, "Yeah, you've been all over the world. What are you going to do?" And I say, "Well, every week I go to Istanbul to do my grocery shopping." And they say, "What?" And I say, "Yeah, it's the Turkish grocery just down the street."
Metaphorically speaking. Yeah.
Metaphorically speaking. So basically, my my energy is going into supporting the people who are working with me to creating this nonprofit on this platform for a truly updated approach to diversity and community building.
It sounds great. And I wish you
Okay.
all the best with this, George. I
Thank
don't know
you.
if we're going to see each other in Dijon. Are you planning to come back to Dijon in May?
I don't know. I'd like to if it's there. One of
Yeah.
my colleagues, Amna Benamara, is going to be presenting there, and she's going to be
Yeah.
doing stuff with some of the work that we're doing. But I that's a relatively close place. I haven't been any place in 4 years, to
Yeah.
tell you the truth. Further, I went to Montpellier once, and I go to Cannes every once a month or so, and that's 15 minutes from here. So
Well,
doing
if
my
I'm
best
in the
to be
area,
out there.
I'll let you know.
Oh, please do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to cook.
I like to eat.
Okay, good. We got a deal.
Thanks so much for this interview, George Simons. It
You're
was
welcome,
amazing
Angie.
talking to you. All the
Thank you,
best.
Angie. Thanks.
Enjoy your
Appreciate
break.
your interest. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.